very excited they're live streaming this. So for all of you here, thank you so much for coming, and for those who are tuning in. And I'm assuming that you will be show this later. My name is Marci Seither, and I think it's the least likely person to ever write anything, and yet it's really hard. I was probably the only one of all of my history that ever been devoted to like back to manual typewriter. And I recall the only person probably in English who never actually read the books to get extra credit. I would just make up the books and write a review of it. Before, you know, it was a cartoon one day. So I was just kind of make a whole one, you know, the author, the culture, the plot lines, and I just make sure there's something kind of negative about it. If you wouldn't want to read it like middle or actually character side. But anyway, so I'm just to say I love writing, but I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. I don't know how much to I love telling stories, and I love hearing stories, and I love sharing stories. And so I'm so thankful to Tyndale. I've been on a book tour with Lakeside Retreat, and this is a collection of stories that have to do with a living. But before I dive into that, I'm going to share with you one of the most important things, and that is that your story matters. I think that the two most important days of a person's life is the day they are born and the day they die. And I think so many times people don't really take the time, and they just think that their stories don't matter and it doesn't have an impact. That is so not true. My Aunt Angela said there is nothing more upsetting than having a story. That's so true. And yet we do it all the time. We think, I should write that down. I should write that down. And I'm going to encourage you to not wait for someday. Last time I checked on the calendar, it just didn't happen to show up. One of the most important things that I had was this from my grandmother. This is a book that she wrote for her kid, and it's called My Story. Now, I can learn all about the dust storm. I can learn all about what it was like to move during the Depression. I could learn about going into the packing shed, but I'm never going to learn about why it was so important to do all that stuff. I'm going to just read a little excerpt. It says, in the spring after Ben was born in 1939, the dirt storms began. If you were never in one of those severe storms, you can't imagine what they were like. You would see a little black line on the horizon, and it would keep coming, and pretty soon it would be there, and you would not be able to see 2 or 3 feet in front of you. One day, Montel was looking across the river in the field, and he saw one start. So he shut the tractor off and got in the car and came home. And just as he got there, the storm hit, and you could hardly see your hand in front of your face. It was so bad that we kept a rope tied from the house to the barn so Montel wouldn't get lost when he had to take care of the livestock. There was an old house on the place next to the one that we lived in, and there was also an artesian well. There was a field west of our house that was blowing very bad, and one morning when we got up, there was a strip of sand that was as high as the house between our house and the old house, and it covered our well, but the water was still running at its end. You had to cross over the sand drifts to get to the well or to the barn, and Montel wondered, how in the world was he going to get all of that out of there? The very next night, the wind blew from the opposite direction and just swept all of that sand away back to the field. Praise the Lord. I just think, what if my grandma had never written that in her little thing? What if she had never shared that with me? And I think that we need to be thinking of that as Christians. How is it that the Lord has impacted our life? I think sometimes when we go to, I love going to old cemeteries and seeing those old tombstones. And you'll see, if you've gone to an old one, sometimes it'll say, Mary Brown, 42 years, 3 months, 14 days. Little Bob, 2 months, 8 times a day. Mr. Tucker, 89 years, 4 months, 23 days. Every single day counted for those people, and they recorded those days, sometimes in their journals. But if we don't record those things, then how will our business, how will our grandkids know? And I loved what in Deuteronomy it says, teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. What are the things that we teach to our children? What do we talk to them about? Do we just talk to them about how their day was at school? Or do we talk about the things that have to do with the Lord? Like, were you ever lost and you have to find your way back home? Were you ever in a dust storm and didn't know how you did well at your as well? So those are the kind of things that I want to encourage you. And we have some worksheets too. So and if you could pass one up here, that would be great too. But so I really wanted to encourage, especially I love writing my stories, and I will read one from here. I really wanted to encourage you that it's not too early and it's not too late to start writing stories down of your own. And it's just like my grandma, she just wrote this little teeny book for all of us, but it means the world because I would have never known these things about her. And when I was doing this book for our kids, I did a recipe collection book, and we all gather around the family table. This is just our family and stories and excerpts. Oh, and I'll do one of those. And some excerpts from my grandma's journal. And when I was going through this, I came to the last chapter, and so like I said, you can create something for your kids, share the story about it. But when I came to the last page, there was a picture that just made me weep. It's a picture right here of a woman in a red dress with her hair done, and she's holding me, and I'm about 18 months old, and she's laughing, and I just started weeping. I know that this is my great grandma's family, but because she's never shared any of those stories with me, I don't know anything about her. Her life, kind of for me, is a tell, and a tell in the Middle East is when a city is raised and another city is built on top of it, and that city is raised and another city is built on top of it. And they can do an archaeological dig, and they can find out, like, okay, so what kind of pottery did they use, or what kind of shoes did they wear? But they're not going to ever be able to tell what it was like when they made casserole for their mother-in-law for the very first time, or what it was like to have to cook the cow's nose being from the dust room, because my grandma never wrote anything down, and she had never told me any of those stories. And I can't believe that I decided I am not going to tell my kids. I am not going to tell for my kids and my grandkids. And I just think that's so important for us, especially with our testimony. How does the Lord show up when we've got good there? How does the Lord show up? And I still struggle with it. Sometimes you'll be like, well, maybe he's going to make the best. And he's going to be about these little things that I'm worried about. But that's not what the Bible says at all. It says, all your cares for you. So how is it that he showed up and cared for you when you felt like you were at the very end and had to look up? Those are the kind of stories and testimonies that we should be sharing with our children and our children's children. Those are the stories that are going to sustain them long after anything that we have of any earthly value pass on the story that we share with them that may count the most. I know when we just moved, I was telling healthcare, but it's just moving from Tennessee or from California to Tennessee. And because my grandmother shared so many of her stories of what it was like to move during the storm, it really was comfort. And I remember like the folks that were on the height of it every time we go to visit. And as we were getting ready to get on the plane to check out and see if that was going to be our new home, I was so unnerved. I just thought, I don't know if I can do this. I almost pretended I had COVID before getting on the plane, just so they wouldn't let me on the plane. I was thinking, no, I'm not charging through the walkway. And then I would say, is it hot here? Because I just can't see camping, then maybe they would not let me on. I used to, but so I went on the plane. I was just, I just was unnerved. It was just a new thing. It was kind of unexpected. We're leaving our home state. We're leaving our families and the things that were familiar to us. And as we went up through the clouds, I quote a lot of times, you're either under the clouds or over the clouds. But we broke through that first layer of clouds, and it wasn't breaking through all of it. There was like this clear space and another, it was almost like quilt batting underneath, and then a clear level, and then another quilt batting on top. And I just felt such a peace, and I thought, you know what? He comes us in for we find and move forward. And if my grandmother could do what she did, I think I'm going to be okay as well. I just think, wow, what a testimony of the power of story. And so I have a worksheet. So if you're watching this and you want a worksheet, contact me. We can maybe put that in the show notes. But it says, everyone has a story worth sharing. Memoir isn't about everything that has happened in your life. It is about the moments in your life that have shaped and defined who you have become as a person. So think about, what I want you to do is think about those defining moments. What are those defining moments? Is it the time when you did have to move cross country? Is it the time when you lost your way someplace and you were lost and you didn't know how to get back? Is it the time when something so crazy and you said, hey, I'm going to buy a ranch in the middle of nowhere and turn it into something spectacular because I'm going to think that's whatever. What are the defining moments that have really shaped your life? And then what was the life lesson for you? I know there have been so many times that I am like, I don't know. I don't know if this prayer is too small. I would have to say that's my recurring fear is that maybe this prayer is just, I don't know which steps come with it. I know this is in Bangladesh and all of the other places that need it so much more. So why would it really matter about the little prayer I prayed? You know what? There have been times where I've learned because I care. And so what are those times that have shaped me? And so think about a specific moments. I really want to talk about this a little bit too. It would be easy for my grandma to have said, living through the dust storms was tough. And that would have been true. But when she told what it was like to wake up and have Stan cover the well with a pile of the height of the house, and what it was like to wonder, how will we ever get the water out? And the next day, when we were in the opposite direction, praise the Lord. That told me so much more about my grandma. That's a 1-inch picture frame. And I think sometimes when we're going to get ready to write our stories, and that's kind of what the Lake Study Retreat is, a collection of stories, of 40 stories, with a prayer and a devotional prompt in each of those 40 stories. The 40 stories are not like lake of life, a panoramic view. Think about a 1-inch picture frame. And what would you tell about that 1-inch picture frame? For me, I might think about the time when my grandpa's knees were so bad he couldn't go down to the water. And so he pretended he was fishing for squirrels instead. And just because he wanted to tease with us kids. Or the time he was in the fishing on the fence with his sister. And when they got back up, my grandpa had won the fishing contest. But then when they went to clean out the fish, they realized that he had filled his fish with rock. And so he didn't really win. That's a 1-inch picture frame of that. I remember going camping when they were really, really young and being so frustrated because it didn't. I told my husband, this isn't camping, this is moving. It feels like we are having to take everything. And he's like, well, you loved camping when you were, like, but my mom had. And so I realized that I needed to lighten my load because camping shouldn't stink, before you get to the campsite. And that's kind of what was on attitude. So I want to encourage you to think about that 1-inch picture frame. And how can your story help someone else encourage them or educate. Sometimes when we talk about our stories and we think, well, it doesn't really matter, it just happened to us, or that just happened to us, or that happened to them. Think about a way that maybe that story, like for my grandmother, the fact that she showed resilience, that story of resilience did help me. It helped me move from California to Tennessee. And I thought if my grandma could do that, I could do that. And what is your biggest fear in writing down your story? I know for me, I went skydiving with our son, and it was kind of a surprise. I told him I was afraid of, he knew I was afraid of heights. And I had donated blood and that t-shirt. He's like, Mama, you're afraid of shots. Well, I'm trying to get over myself. And so, and then I said, you know, who knows, maybe this over my fear of heights, I'm just going to have to do a big jump or something. And so 2 years later, he was like, Mom, I'm picking you up from the airport. Or when you pick me up from the airport, I'm coming home from college. I've had a prize. I've got a surprise present. Like, ooh, a present. Of course I will. He's like, okay, we'll get ready for it. I'm like, okay, I am. And so I got closer. He goes, okay, well, are you getting excited about your present? I'm like, oh, sure. He's like, I need you to wear tennis shoes, pair of pants, and maybe a sweatshirt. Oh, okay. I said, well, can I take a camera? He's like, oh, sure, you can take a camera. I'm like, oh, we're going cave exploring. I know it. And so the day of us going, me picking them up, I had been cooking, and I'm always wearing an apron because I'm a very sloppy person. And so I always have an apron on. And I just made a new style of apron, so I'm trying it out. You know, when you're in the car and you have an apron on, why don't you take it off? Like it's a large zip. And so I had the apron on, I pulled into the airport, and like, okay, well, I'm gonna drive now. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I got to the passenger, and he's driving, and sure enough, we're going exactly where I thought we would go. We're going towards in Athens, where we used to go cave, where we went cave exploring before. And just that time, we made a big turn and went back around the park right to the large pond that said skydiving. And I was like, no way. I grabbed the handle. I'm like, your dad know? Or is your dad okay with you throwing me out of the plane? He's like, oh yeah, he's fine with that. I'm like, okay, now we got that problem. So I'm like, I don't know about that. I just don't think I can do this. Like, Mom, you don't do this. I'm going to jump at the same time. We're both going to do tandem jump, but we're both doing it together. I'm going with you. And I just like, just do it. This is the time to get over your fear of heights. So then I thought, can I wear my apron? So we get all signed up. I got to use the mom. And they all said, okay, well, I'll be showing photos. And is there anything that you want to say before you do your big jump? And I said, I wish I would have burned my journal. Oh, like I've never heard that one before. And I think though, back to what is the biggest fear? I think that's our biggest fear. Is that if we write down all of our stories, then what if somebody reads them and is upset or offended? Because we don't write those things that are personal down. And so I think if you have those kind of stories, it's okay to write those down too. And if you want to keep them private, just tell your friend before my body's cool, and as you're running to the house and burn the journal, just make a pact that you can write it down. And I just think, even though it was kind of funny when I said that, I think that is one of the things that we from writing down our stories. We're fearful. What will people think? Wow, I thought you were a Christian. You know, like I just really thought that about somebody. But you know what? Maybe I have thought things that I had to work through. And then the Lord's like, yeah, you are kind of a smart man. So maybe there are some things that we've got to cover out. You know, I don't think there's anything that's going to surprise the Lord when we write our stories down. And if you choose to share them, then that will be a blessing to that person too. So I want to encourage you that what is the biggest fear in writing down your story? What talked to somebody the other day, and I think some people are going to write their stories down. My grandmother didn't have what she had. She had this. And I think sometimes people are so fearful, like, well, I'm not an English major, or I don't have this. I can't imagine being so worried about punctuation that we wouldn't write it down. And yet, in our minds, if you are of a certain age and older, there was always 2 grades on everything. There was grammar in first grade, and there was content. And we don't write down our stories because we're wondering about the red pen. It's correct. And I just have to tell you, there is no red pen. There is no red pen when you're writing down your story. Just write it down and get it out. I tell people I have 2 daughters. They have obsessive grammar disorder, OG, OCD, or so they have obsessive grammar disorder, and they know all their grammar rules, all have to be redone. And I'll tell her, I think I have a dangling something. Can you check and make sure all the colons are okay? She's like, well, why did you put a comma right there? I'm like, I don't know. And so I'm glad that I wasn't dissuaded from writing because I was part of it. Glad I wasn't dissuaded from writing because I just really love reading. I'm glad that my grandmother wasn't dissuaded from writing her story because maybe she was too busy and maybe she didn't feel like she had anything to say. We have 6 kids, and I was always a mom who wrote. And when people would tell me, oh, I would write, but I'm way too good, at least record something down here. And so I just want to encourage you, even if it's just once in a blue moon, you write something down. I'm going to read
I said it's a lot of fun. I guess especially at my age, in my 70s, it's like, where do I start?
Well, that's a great question. So the question is, where do I start? And I would have to say, the best place to start is right where you're at. So if there's something that comes to mind, I'm just thinking right now, this is the fall. So if you could just write down, what is the fall memory that you remember? What is one of your first fall memories that you remember? What is the first Christmas gift that you ever gave to someone? Have you ever been in a situation where you saw that somebody had less than you did and you were filled with passion for that person? How did that affect you? If you could start where you're at, it doesn't have to be, you're not talking about the whole dash. We're talking about 1 inch frame. These are pearl earrings, and I love pearls. I love that it's just one small fan that gets irritated enough where a pearl is formed, and that's kind of like a story. There's one small thing that gets coated until something beautiful is formed. Now I have a pearl necklace too. Not on. I have a pearl necklace, and that's a whole string of these little pearls. That's kind of what our stories are. So even if you just have 3 pearls, each of those pearls is precious. So it is hard to know where to start. And you might want to start the closest to where you're at and work backwards. And the couple, what was the name of your first pet? Remember your first pet? And what was the name of your, what did your mom pack for lunch? One of my favorite things is when my mom would make extra frosting because she would put it between graham crackers. And I loved that. I still love that. And so, and she would usually make me frosting because my aunt was overcoming, and I loved that. So it was always a good memory of packing our lunches. And so, yeah, what's your back?
In that book that your grandmother left, Was
Yeah.
that just about the dust storms or was that about other things from her life?
This is about her whole life.
So her smattering of what she shared.
It starts from when she was young, from her parents actually. And it just talks a little bit here. And the fact that my parents lived in Missouri for a short time and I was born while they lived there. I have a postcard written to my parents and addressed to Lincoln, Missouri, and that is in St. Clair County. But there is no town by that name in Missouri anymore, and I was born. I was born June 7th, 1910. And so it starts with her talking about it. Her mom, this is not a very big, her going with my grandpa, involved with WPA work, about her going to school. She lived in Hopkins, Kansas. And it's just a funny thing. So anyway, and about when they got married. We had planned to be married in the spring after my first term of school was out, but we didn't want to wait that long. In the winter of 1929, Montel was out of work and I was staying in Grand Rapids, and I went there on the weekends. One time when I went there for the weekend, Grant said, "Why don't you two get married? I'm tired of sleeping with Monty. His feet stink." On February 2nd, 1929, I had to go to Colby's to get something for my school, and I wanted Montel to go with me, but he wouldn't come. I was standing in the kitchen cabinet washing dishes and trying to persuade him to go. He kept saying no. So I finally told him that if he would go, we would get married. He said, "Do you mean it?" I told him yes. So we brought in a wash tub by the heating stove into the bath. We went to hospital and got our nurse. Louise and Grant both stood with us. Montel and Grant in Grant's car, and Louise and Glenn went out. So we got to Colby. I bought a new dress there, and Montel got shirts. It just goes on to talk a little bit about this and the fact that we had to take separate cars into town to get married. And then they had to take separate cars leaving the town because we weren't allowed to be married. So they didn't want anybody to know that they got married right at the same time. So I mean, so it was neat because then to talk about this, then I could ask her some questions. So I'm sort of thinking about this year. And it goes all the way in this book, goes all the way to after my grandfather passed away. And it goes to when she did the death in her. So that's a pretty small meandering of information her whole life in this little book. But I can't imagine not having her. So I can't imagine just not sharing. So, yeah, start where you're at. It doesn't have to be the thing. It can be a one-inch picture frame. They have a lot of different spot prompts up there, and it's a great place to start. We're just talking about the lake. What's your favorite lake to go to? Oh, yeah. Lake Michigan. What is your favorite memory of Lake Michigan?
Well, maybe I'm sorry. Yeah, I was, but
Yeah.
well, just reading things to Jerry. I remember going there 50 years ago with my mother. Because my oldest son is 51, and it was before he was born, so I do remember us going up there. And Jerry was pretty busy 100 years.
Wow.
And so, something like that, that was, my mom loved to do that. She loved this time, and she loved going there with her church there. And
So your son would have been 1 year old?
no, it was before, I know I went, because my son is just turned 51, so I know it was before he was born.
Okay.
So it was before I had children.
And it would be,
And he knew his grandmother as long as she lived just 2 times.
wow.
So, he did a lot with her growing up, but that part he was not.
You would know. Yeah. But the fact that that maybe was a special place. And the fact that, what was it that was significant? Or you went, maybe as a bride and, the other place to, that it was special. It was a routine, it was a tradition. What kind of tradition do we have in our still there, right past it, is what they're afraid about. I think of my daughter when she was going to have our first grandchild, and I said, honey, can I give you want some motherly advice on this? And she's like, yes. I'm like, you are going to screw this up. She's like, what? I said, you know what? Your kid is going to throw up at the worst time. There's going to be smells that you didn't even know possible coming out from that cute little body. And you are going to get to the end of the day and you're not even going to have the same shoes on. And you're going to wonder when the last time you brushed your teeth was. And you know what? And you're going to be frustrated. And you're probably going to have cornflakes for dinner more than one time. And at the end of the day, you're going to tuck that little baby in bed and then reach up and catch your face. And that's what matters most. So all the other stuff is just stuff. And don't worry about the small stuff. Because the roses come and go so quickly. And so I just think, what is their advice to you guys? What is the advice that you want to give to your mom? She probably didn't tell you. She probably was a little bit more tactful than I was. But, what are those things that we want to share about sharing memories, about how fast it is? I would say one thing is how easy it is to pass up something like the little cherry nuts. How easy it is to just drive past and not stop. And in today's life, think of it like that. You just drive right past, so we don't think, oh yeah, we just have to have something special. But you know what? To take that time, what does it mean to take time?
Only been listening when we were driving by, she and I thought it was so off. When we were up there a couple of times, and my husband was asked if we need to go to the pull-off on Lake Michigan because it's special. Now I would consider like other places on Lake Michigan, but this was a special little place where you can. It's right there. It's just really neat. It's got a lot of all the stones, and you can walk right out. Lots of trees, and it's a quiet.
Right. So that's the important thing. When I was talking about like, what is this way? It's like, what are the places in your life that are quiet? When our grandparents moved, all their family was, and all the siblings had decided we need to find a place where our family can go for vacation. So they kind of went on this quest to find the perfect camping spot, and they would try one place and then try another place. Finally, they had settled on this down, and our family's been camping for over 50 years in that spot. It was perfect for everything. It was perfect for water skiing. It was perfect for fishing. It was perfect for campsites. There was one problem that it had. It did not have a beach. It was all rock. And so my grandpa, he noticed that there was a little bit of sand in all those rocks. And so he picked up some rocks and he threw it. And then he picked up some more rocks and he threw it right down and started playing. Pretty soon, after a while, there was enough for his beach towel. And then pretty soon, there was the first beach towel. Now there's probably 50 feet of clear beach because every year for the last 50 years, our family has been rock throwers. And so the point of the story is what bigger rocks to throw to make it through. And I just think, this is the kind of story, it doesn't seem like it's a big story. I'm going to read a story called Packing. It's the first out of the people say, which chapter is your favorite? I think they're all my favorites at different times. And I wouldn't say I did take most of the pictures, but most of the photography was mine. And that was kind of an exciting my friends, granddaughter Gracie and Lydia. They were so excited about the book signings. We signed each other's books, and they wanted to know if they were going to be famous. I'm like, you are famous to me. This one is, Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. From Matthew 11:20. After months of waiting, it was finally time to go with my friends and their family cabin on Lake Michigan for 2 full weeks of sun, giggles, swimming, and enjoying each other's company. I started to make a list of all the things I might need for the trip. What if one of my tennis shoes gets wet and it isn't fine for our next walk? I wondered. So I tossed in a spare pair of shoes. More questions arose. What if I need a raincoat and a jacket with a hood? What about an extra pair of socks or a spare pair of leggings? And soon a pile I had built was far bigger than I expected. Bathing suits, hiking shoes, notepads, watercolors, books. I had hoped to read extra clothes and shoes for cooler weather. My carry-on was full of cameras, extra batteries, a digital recorder, my laptop and pen. I also crammed in my cooking magazine, a novel, and a self-help book about being more organized. Isn't there a washer and dryer at the cabin window sitting on half about a pile? Who knows what the weather might do, I said, trying to justify my choices. It could get cold or rainy. I looked at my rain boots and wondered whether I would really be walking in the woods during a downpour. Probably not. I began to remove anything I really didn't need. What a relief to get rid of unnecessary baggage. Overpacking for my time at the cabin felt a little like stuffing my calendar and the never-ending to-do list, cramming as much in as possible, and then wondering why my shoulders hurt and my back ache carrying around the road. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate what we're carrying around physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Sometimes we think we might need things in case of an emergency or an unexpected circumstance. So we try to carry more than what is really necessary. We worry about things outside of our control, such as what would we do if we were to lose security in our home, if our kids never graduate from college or find a good job, or if we had to care full time for our elderly parents. We spend a lot of energy wondering how to manage all the stuff we put into our own hearts. The Lord sees the burdens we carry and offers not only to help us carry them, but to give us rest as well. He wants us to come to Him with our overflowing suitcases so He can help us see what we don't need and trust Him for the things that we really do. Lord, thank you that I can trust you with my heavy burden. Thank you for urging me to come to you so that you can lighten my load as I go through this adventure called life. Are you caring too much? Why? Make a list of the things you can do to help lighten your load. So that's one of the first ones that I said. And I think that's just a short story, but it's talking about this. So I don't know how much time we have left, but I think we're about writing your story, why it matters, like the value to it. But we started writing over 20 years ago when I used to write to my mom, and it was back in the day when it was like, you got mail. And so I would write an email to my mom, and it was easier actually to type it out and then to text it to her. We were living in Minnesota at the time, we had 6 kids, and so I was writing about everyday experiences. And she said, honey, you really should send me this to these papers. These are really fun. Well, they're kind of really funny because they happen to us. Just no, everyone in the whole office is really enjoying it. I'm like, okay, first of all, that's a little creepy. Everyone in the office is reading our mail. And she said, I really think you should do it. So I just really felt like, well, that's probably not going to happen, but just to show you, to prove to you that I am really not a writer, I will go ahead and clean one of them. So I had a friend who said, if you want to write something, just let me know, I'll help you clean it up. And so she made up one about a food safety fiasco, and it went into the paper, and the newspaper called me after it went in. So what she wrote, and that's kind of a long story, but long story short, the editor said that she wants to write a humor column for us once a month. And I'm like, well, sure I would, because I got what I'm doing. So I kept thinking, oh my goodness. So I wrote a humor column for the small town paper for his Minnesota, the Daily Journal, for about a year and a half. And I loved it. And then when we moved to California, I started writing that paper. And then I started writing human stories, and I loved that. And then I went to Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference, and I took all my things, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is when they realized she has no idea what she's doing, and they're going to look at my stuff and say, don't take your day job. And I was so unnerved, and I went there and thought, I am a storyteller. I am a writer. And it kind of was a little bit like Gideon, who was on the threshing floor, and he just, mighty warrior. He's like, kind of like here. I'm not really a mighty warrior. He's like, oh yeah, yes you are. And so in that moment, I got very good. And so I started taking on more jobs, and I took correspondence course for 2 years. I learned more, and then in 2010, I won the Guidepost Story Contest. I've written lots of stories for Guidepost. Sometimes they're under my name, sometimes they're under whoever's story it is that I've written. So there's Guidepost, there's Like Life with a magazine. They're no longer around, so I wrote a great story for them. I wrote a book on a family, and then hundreds for local papers. I was on the street girl, and we had 312 people a year without one column. I had a random question, I read people. And then I realized I wanted to take pictures, because a small town paper, if you have a photographer that you're going to do a great story, and then there's a train derailment or something, the photographer is going to go to something that's not saying. So I thought, if I want to sell my story, I better be able to take a picture. I'm not going to waste my time. And so I started doing photos. And I loved that. I was always a creative storyteller. I was always a visual storyteller. So I really studied that and started doing photos. So I went to Ireland with friends who said, hey, I saw your recipe book and I want you to do that for me for my Ireland trip. So she was the real author as well. It's the sanctuary. I read her book, and her book was like, I can't take it for 5 or 7. I want to go up. So I told my husband, start flying around. And he said, and so I learned how to fly a drone. And then I took that drone to, I said, I think it's where I can take off, fly to the house, sterilize the dog, and then land back where I took off. I'll be doing great. Flying a drone, this is forward, right, the left. And when you turn your drone around, it's facing this way, it's forward, right, left, yep, thank you. That, and so I got to where I was, that was the story, and all the drone photos for her project. So I think the biggest thing about writing for me is, and I've done a project I always, I think that I might have my book in that. I always write a book for our grandkids every year, and so then I publish those. And so, as far as writing goes, I've done a little bit of everything. There was a 4th grade historical that I did, the Adventures of Shirley Monroe, based on true history, and it was a story that I did not like. So anyway, I wrote the Adventures of Shirley Monroe because we have 4 boys, and I'm never going to read about cutting and doll ever. And so I knew that was their attention. These are books that I wrote for our grandkids. And so those things
You can just do those online. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, so these are highly skilled construction paper cutouts. Like Eric Carl. So if you have a picture, I mean, this one was here we went to Hawaii, and I pulled it from my flipper's point of view. So writing stories was a lot.
How did it illustrate it?
So I wanted to do this book for the kids, and I just thought, well, how would we illustrate that? Like, one of our favorite books are Eric Carl, like Brown Bear brown bear, caterpillar, and he just cut out construction paper. It's just paper cutout. So that's what I did. I kind of looked like Hobby Lobby grew up in our living room by the time I got done. But it's kind of neat. Their book, I actually did a workbook, but like all of this is a fine paper, and then it shows up. So I start with an 8x8. I cut out the shape, and then I in, and I dropped the text over it. And I print it off. In Marci goes to Ireland. Now there's that's grandma goes to Ireland, and then this one says that Marci goes to Ireland. But yeah, so there's nothing like making yourself a construction paper to kind of spice up the party with that. So, and that's kind of, but some of these are pretty basic, basic shapes. This was a fun one. Circle. So yeah.
I just scrapbook it. So similarly, you can have a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. It would be like scrap.
Well, and I did the books on
Peekaboo or
scrapbooking your
oh.
I mean, those books I did, I took our pictures and put them in.
Yeah. Creative memories.
Yeah.
Creative memories?
Peekaboo or snap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's how I made it. Well, that's my writing. I could write anything and publish it totally animal from America. Animal from I love stories. I love food. I love photos. I love that kind of stuff.
I was wondering if you wrote fiction or.
I did the historical fiction, but actually I did have a fiction called that I did in the Bible. So put it out there and they do the NaNoWriMo with the staff. She'll not write for November.
What's a historical fiction?
It was the historical fiction is that.
Okay.
But it's based on true story. I think you write what you read. Mostly, I have 750 to 1,200 word extensions. They don't. But I read it. Anyway, thank you so much for letting me come and talk about story writing, and I hope you feel encouraged to write some things down for your family. So, you might want to